Hey, Steve Gamache here with another Chef Knives to Go Quick Look product review. And what we're looking at this time is the Matsubara Shitogami or White No. 1 Gyuto 210mm knife. This knife has a core steel of Shitogami or White Paper No. 1 reactive high carbon steel from Hitachi. And the heat treat they shoot for is about 61 Rockwell on that. These are all handmade. So the weights, the dimensions, the spine thicknesses and such are going to vary a little bit from knife to knife because they're hand hammered, hand forged. The construction is a 3-layer sandwich. It's all reactive. So you've got soft iron, reactive iron cladding on either side of that hard core steel, the White No. 1. And then they also have included a black protective finish known as a blacksmith finish or kudo uchi on top of that reactive cladding for a little bit of corrosion protection. And then they have coated the entire blade, which is pretty normal for this type of knife, in a food-safe lacquer finish. You can either leave that on and just let it wear normally and the thing will patina as you do that, or you can use acetone and take it all off right off the bat. Your call. I would recommend either sharpening this right out of the box or getting it sharpened from Chef Knives to Go. They do charge for that, but you'll have a really good idea of how sharp this is because the lacquer typically gets on the edge a little bit and you need to crisp that edge up. So I'd say put your own edge on this if you can. And hey, it's Shitogami No. 1. Almost nothing sharpens as easily as that. And if you want something that's confidence building and you're learning to sharpen, Shitogami No. 1 is awesome. The weight on this knife is 151 grams or about 5.3 ounces, so it's a pretty light knife for the size. The edge length is right about 210 on the money, or about 8 1/4 inches, and overall length about 360 millimeter. Spine thickness on this particular one is fairly thick coming out of the handle, about 4.1 millimeters at the back of the blade, but above the back of the blade. But as it thins down almost constantly, except for this section here. And it's almost kind of a consistent taper, and it gets really thin right at the very tip where the grind is. So it's pretty impressive for a hand-hammered knife like this, the way they did that. Blade height on this one is pretty generous at 50.1 millimeters. And the handle's nothing special. It's a D-shaped, right-hand-oriented hoe wood handle with a buffalo horn ferrule. Got a little bit of a jump between the wood and the the wood and the ferrule, but it's not much, and you could easily sand that down, or most people probably might not even notice it or worry about it. Circumference on the handle is about 73 millimeters or 2.9 where the ferrule meets the main part of the handle. And you do have a pretty generous neck on these, so you can put your finger in there for a pinch grip, and it's highly oriented towards a nice pinch grip. Frankly, I'm a lefty, and D-shaped handles do not bother me one bit because when I'm doing that, there's nothing really there that's putting that D in the crook of my hand. I mean, it does. I don't even care. So if you're a lefty, I wouldn't really worry about the D shape too much, especially if you pinch grip. If you racket grip, maybe pinch grip, I would not even let it bother you. The close-up look at this. These are made with a rustic aesthetic to them, so they've got some hammered marks. They've a lot of character. You can definitely tell every knife is a hand-hammered workpiece. So they've got a lot of character. Every knife's going to be unique. They've got a really good hand-chiseled kanji on all these that I've seen 3 of them now in this batch, and they're all great hand-chiseling. You can feel it with your finger. You got the kudo uchi finish that fills some of that in, but it's still pretty crisp in terms of look and feel, so it's a nice effect. It's a very authentic effect. It's a cool addition to this. Cool touch. And then you can see they've got some kind of random hammer marks on these. Every knife's going to be a little different, but they've definitely got some hammer marks from the blacksmith, and you can really see the handmade character on these. Fit and finish actually is pretty good on the general touches, like the spine is a little bit relieved, the choil, the back of the blade here, and also into the curve into the neck. So really comfortable right out of the box for that. The grinds, they grind these pretty thin right at the edge. The Nikiri was ridiculously thin. This one is pretty thin at the edge. Not as thin as that, but it's a different style of knife. But it's still pretty doggone thin at the edge. And, I don't know if let me back off my focus here a little bit. I don't think I did the balance point. Balance point for me is about right there. Pretty light handle, but pretty light blade as well. So that's almost perfect for me for a pinch grip. It's like I didn't even have to move my finger. So very light, very nimble feeling knife. As far as what it looks like on the cutting board, every knife's going to be a little bit different, but you can see the tip is fairly low in relation to the center line of the height of the knife, so we don't have a ton of belly towards the tip. This particular one's got a small hiccup or two in the profile that could easily be cleaned up on a sharpening stone. If you know the technique, to clean up the profile and smooth it out. So this would be easy to smooth out the profile on a little bit, but we kind of flow into a little bit of a flat area towards the back half of the knife, and then you've got a little bit of a back belly towards the heel on this. Again, this could easily be smoothed out quite a bit, but again, every knife is going to be a little bit different. Not a ton of belly towards the tip. Let's see how far I can get. So I can get, actually, for this one, I can get pretty high, and I think that's the very tip they've grounded a little bit upsweep at the very, very, very tip to help that. So I could actually rock this pretty well over medium to small stuff, and it's got kind of a little bit of gentle curve, but a little bit of flat at the back. So I'd say this is kind of an all-arounder profile. Again, this one could be touched up just a little bit to smooth it out quite a bit. Let's look at that impressive taper on this. So here's your thickness coming out of the handle. So people sometimes say, oh, I don't want something over blah 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 for the handle or for the spine thickness, but you can't always go by that, because this thing tapers down, holds it kind of in this area here, and then it gets really thin at the tip. So you know, thickness coming out of the handle does not always affect the overall performance of the knife by any means. So this is an interesting knife line. It's got great, easy to sharpen, Shitogami #1 steel, thin at the edge, all reactive if you want to try something in that characteristic. Nice taper on the spine. It's light, nimble. This is the Matsubara Shitogami #1 Gyuto 210mm knife.